Hello students, today we will be talking about autonomic drugs. So before taking up the actual topic, we will talk about organization of nervous system. What is nervous system? What are the various parts of nervous system? What is autonomic nervous system? What are the various divisions of autonomic nervous systems? Now, by definition, autonomic drugs means those drugs which act exclusively on autonomic nervous system. Let us understand the basics. So first of all, we'll talk about classification of autonomic nervous system. We'll talk briefly about cholinergic nervous system, neurotransmitter of cholinergic nervous system, biosynthesis, storage and release of acetylcholine, and finally we will talk about cholinergic receptors, their subtypes and location. Now, nervous system, let us understand the basic organization of nervous system. It is classified into two important divisions, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system means spinal cord and brain. Peripheral nervous system includes efferent nervous system and efferent. So efferent is further divided into autonomic nervous system, means that nervous system which controls involuntary physiological actions, and other one is somatic nervous system which controls voluntary physiological actions. And autonomic nervous system is further having three divisions: sympathetic division, enteric division and parasympathetic division. So this is the basic organization of entire nervous system. Now coming to autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system, the word autonomic itself means which is somewhat independent. It behaves somewhat independently. No doubt it is under the central control of central nervous system, but still it can behave independently. Now autonomic nervous system has two subdivisions. One would be adrenergic nervous system, other one would be cholinergic nervous system. And cholinergic nervous system, we'll talk about it. It has got two types of receptors: central receptors, peripheral receptors. And these very receptors, either central receptors or peripheral receptors, can be grouped into two subclasses. You have nicotinic receptors and muscarinic receptors. Now, so far as nicotinic receptors are concerned, you find nicotinic receptors at motor end plate, at adrenal medulla, and finally at the sympathetic and parasympathetic ganglia of peripheral nervous system. Whereas muscarinic receptors can be found in postganglionic nerves of going to sweat glands, and parasympathetic postganglionic nerves towards heart, some exocrines and smooth muscles. Now, autonomic nervous system, as I said just now, it behaves independently because autonomic ganglia are situated outside the cerebrospinal axis. For example, diagrammatically, this is the cranium. Inside the cranium, you have got brain, and next, this is the vertebral column. Here you find the cerebral, this is the vertebral column. Now from the spinal cord, so many lakhs of nerve fibers emerge out, and these very nerve fibers end in ganglia, and these very ganglia innervate different organs. So these ganglia are situated outside the cerebrospinal axis. This is cerebrospinal axis, and these very ganglia behave independently. That is why it is called autonomic. Secondly, ANS is also known as involuntary system because it controls large number of involuntary physiological actions. And thirdly, it is also known as visceral nervous system because controls the actions of visceral organs generally. Now, autonomic drugs have number of therapeutic applications. So many drugs act on autonomic nervous system, and they have tremendous effect on these very physiological processes. Now, brief difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So far as origin of sympathetic nerves is concerned, it is also known as thoracolumbar, whereas parasympathetic system is called craniosacral. These are T1 to L2, L3 vertebrae from where these thoracolumbar area emerges out. And the postganglionic nerve fibers in sympathetic nervous system are somewhat longer than that of parasympathetic nerve fibers. They are shorter. And the neurotransmitter in sympathetic nervous system is noradrenaline, whereas it is acetylcholine in case of cholinergic or parasympathetic nervous system. And so far as stability of neurotransmitter is concerned, it is very much stable in case of sympathetic nervous system. It diffuses, has a wide action, whereas in case of parasympathetic nervous system, acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter, it degrades rapidly. It doesn't have a therapeutic application. So the functions of sympathetic nervous system is during stress, during emergency conditions, and parasympathetic nervous system involves assimilation of food and conservation of energy. Now, some of the prominent actions of parasympathetic nervous system, for example, on pupil, it leads to constriction of pupil. So far as saliva is concerned, saliva secretion is stimulated. All secretions are stimulated by parasympathetic nervous system. So far as bronchial airways are concerned, parasympathetic leads to constriction. Heartbeat is slow, heart rate is slow, BP is down. Digestion, there is stimulation of digestion. Gallbladder, again stimulation. Intestine, again stimulation, there is enhance in peristaltic movements. So far as bladder is concerned, again you observe constriction. On the contrary, sympathetic nervous system in case of pupil has opposite action. As you see, it leads to dilatation of pupil, it causes inhibition of salivary secretions and other secretions, airways get dilated, heart rate becomes slower, digestion is somewhat inhibited. So far as liver is concerned, there is enhancement in glucose release. In adrenal glands, epinephrine, norepinephrine, they are stimulated, and in bladder there is relaxation, and there intestine there is inhibition of peristaltic movement and secretion. So these are some of the physiological actions of both the systems, and you can see they are opposite to each other. Now, in coming to cholinergic nervous system or parasympathetic nervous system, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. It was discovered by Otto Loewy. He called it vagus stuff. It mimics the electrical stimulation of vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is a parasympathetic nerve. It releases acetylcholine. Vagus nerve innervates heart, innervates stomach, innervates GIT, and location you can say different cholinergic sites, all autonomic ganglia, at many autonomically innervate organs, neuromuscular junctions, and many synapses in the CNS. So acetylcholine is released at these very sites. Now coming to parasympathetic nervous system, we can call it cholinergic nervous system also, cholinomimetic nervous system also. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter. Acetylcholine it is present at diverse cholinergic sites. It is found at neuromuscular junction, some autonomic nervous system, central nervous system, non-neuronal cholinergic system. It acts as neurotransmitter as neuromuscular junction, autonomic ganglia, and at terminal synapse of parasympathetic postganglionic fibers and some sympathetic postganglionic fibers, and in the CNS as well. Now coming to biosynthesis of acetylcholine, that biosynthesis takes place in the axon. This in red represents axon. So choline from the blood, from the food material along with sodium, it gets transported into the axonal terminal, and this biosynthesis of acetylcholine starts with choline acetyltransferase is an enzyme that is responsible for converting choline into acetylcholine in presence of coenzyme A. Coenzyme A comes from metabolism of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So acetylcholine is later on stored in the synaptic vesicles. So these synaptic vesicles store it properly in then under the influence of calcium ions, when there is requirement, it gets released. It reacts or acts with postsynaptic receptor. It gets activated, and here you find cholinergic receptors, that is nicotinic receptors and muscarinic receptor. Acetylcholine binds with the receptor. This is presynaptic receptor, this is postsynaptic receptor, this is preganglionic nerve, this is postganglionic nerve. Now here you find certain important things. The transport of choline is hereby blocked by certain agents, hemicholinum. It may interfere with the biosynthesis of acetylcholine. Similarly, the release of acetylcholine from the synaptic vesicles is blocked by botulinum toxin. And thirdly, Acetylcholine, the moment it is released from the synaptic vesicles, when it tends to bind with the acetylcholine receptors, there it gets degraded by enzyme acetylcholine esterase. It is once again degraded to acetate and choline. So the degradation of acetylcholine takes place here. It is hydrolyzed by acetylcholine esterase in the synaptic cleft. Choline is released here. It is again recycled for transport of choline into the axonal terminal. This is biosynthesis of acetylcholine. This is here the structure of choline. Under the influence of choline acetyl transferase, you get acetylcholine. Acetyl group is introduced in the choline here. That is the role of acetylcholine esterase or transferase. Here this is the coenzyme A or acetyl coenzyme A. This is a preganglionic nerve. This is sympathetic nerve. It has a preganglionic nerve. Then it is the ganglion followed by postganglionic nerve. Now in the preganglionic nerve, in the postganglionic nerve, neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. In the postganglionic nerve, it innervates smooth muscles, heart, etc. This is sympathetic preganglionic nerve. This is the ganglion itself. This is postganglionic nerve which innervates sweat glands. It has neurotransmitter present is acetylcholine. This is a very important exception here. Again you have sympathetic preganglionic nerve. They innervate adrenal medulla, etc. And this is postganglionic parasympathetic nerve. Neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. In the ganglion itself, neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. In the postganglionic parasympathetic nerve, neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, which innervates smooth muscles, heart, and so many glands. This we need to remember. Then you have cholinergic receptors. They are of two types, muscarinic and nicotinic. These are the subtypes of muscarinic receptor, M1, M2, M3, M4 and M5. M1 receptors we find in autonomic ganglia, gastric glands and CNS. M2 receptors we find in heart, nerves and smooth muscles. M3 receptor we find in glands, smooth muscles. M4 we find in CNS. M5 again we find in CNS. Nicotinic receptors subtypes NN and NM. NN you find in autonomic ganglia, adrenal medulla and CNS, and NM you find exclusively in nuclear muscular junction. Nicotinic receptors, here you can see again you can see the axon over here. This is presynaptic neuron. This is the synaptic cleft, means where one neuron ends, other begin. This is postsynaptic membrane over here. This is synaptic cleft. This is the muscle. This is neuromuscular junction. Now, nicotinic receptors, you remember, they are ligand-gated receptors, ligand-gated ion channels. They are located postsynaptically at many autonomic synapses. And secondly, muscarinic acetylcholine receptors are G-coupled protein receptors. Now, nicotinic receptors, the diagrammatic representation of nicotinic muscarinic receptors is composed of 4 different species of subunits, 2 alpha, beta, gamma and delta. The neuronal receptor is composed of only 2 subunits. It is a funnel-shaped structure. In the funnel-shaped structure you find a central core. It is a pore, that is internal ion channel, surrounded by 5 subunits. These subunits are the sites for agonist, antagonist and alpha toxin. So nicotinic receptor comprises of alpha subunits 2, beta subunit 1, delta subunit 1, gamma subunit 1. Then we have the diagrammatic representation of this nicotinic receptor. This is alpha unit, gamma, alpha and beta. This is the central channel or the core. These are the possible dimensions. This is acetylcholine binding site. It is from the top view you can see. Then muscarinic receptors subtype M1, M2, M3, M4. They are G-coupled proteins. They perform their actions via second messenger. That second messenger, it may be either they may have a stimulatory action or inhibitory action. M1, M2, M3, M1, M3 and M5 they have excitatory action, whereas M4 and M2 subtypes they have inhibitory action. M3 you find in muscle cells, gastric glands, salivary gland, iris, bronchiole, small intestine, etc. M4 and M5 you find in substantia nigra and hippocampus. This was part first of this cholinergic transmission or drugs acting on autonomic nervous system. Thank you. This is muscarinic receptors.